We move on with our analysis. Josh Blackman joins us next, professor of law at the South Texas College of Law in Houston. Josh specializes in constitutional law, the United States Supreme Court, and the intersection of law and technology. Thank you for joining us, sir. It's great to have you here on France 24. So many questions. Can I start with a very basic one in the light of what we've heard about Donald Trump already raising a question about what's going to happen in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that state, other states too. If the result of the election is challenged, what happens next?
The challenges can take many forms. So one possible ground of challenges are ballots that were mailed by the deadline, but were not received by November 6th, which is the extended deadline. Another ground of challenge is if someone did not fill out their ballot properly. They didn't sign the right thing, they didn't put the right markings. Another possible ground is whether the extension of 3 days is even valid. The U.S. Supreme Court split on a basically 4-4 vote on whether this extension was valid. There's a prayer that all people take before an election, that's let it not be close. If it's close in this country, the elections go to the courts, which is something that we'll find out in a couple hours if that's going to happen.
Indeed, constitutionally then, I imagine all kinds of things come into play. But even before voting day, Donald Trump has referred to this as the most fraudulent election ever. One might say he's just trying to stoke up his support to get out and cast their votes. But nonetheless, to have the president say that, it does have an impact, doesn't it, on what happens?
I think we've become kind of desensitized to President Trump's comments, at least here in the United States. He made similar remarks throughout the 2016 election when he ran against Hillary Clinton, and he's saying much the same now. So I don't think these sorts of statements even resonate in our legal landscape. But frankly, his comments are irrelevant. What's going to matter is whether the vote's close, and if they are, every single ballot becomes closely scrutinized in Pennsylvania and other states. I'm sure his comments will declare victory this evening, no matter what happens. But I think we're in for either a very short process, if it's a blowout, that is Biden wins by a large margin, or weeks of fighting, which President Trump will no doubt stoke the flames, as you say, for some time to come.
Just speaking to us, we've seen images of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, the late Supreme Court Justice who's passed on. And she's been replaced, of course, by Amy Coney Barrett. And the balance of the Supreme Court tipped more and more in favor of the Republicans. And in some countries, it's hard to believe that something so high up as the highest court in the land can be political. But as I understand it, in the U.S., that's the case. Clearly, if in the final analysis it goes to the Supreme Court, clearly that gives Trump an advantage.
The Supreme Court's always a variable. There was a case 20 years ago called Bush v. Gore, which your viewers may remember, which involved a Florida recount. And there was a dispute of whether the Florida Supreme Court had erred, had made a mistake. On a 5-4 vote, the court's 5 conservatives voted to stop the Florida recount, as ordered by the lower court. And the 4 liberal justices said, no, we should let the state court decide what the process is. And that was a very unpopular decision. It isn't clear to me which way the court goes in this tight case. Sure, there's a conservative majority, but the Chief Justice, John Roberts, has shown this willingness to sort of vote the other way to try to save the court's face, and perhaps Justice Kavanaugh might as well. We don't know where Justice Barrett might vote. Indeed, Justice Barrett might recuse, that is, she might step down and not even hear an election case because of her appointment so close to the election. There are so many open questions that we just hope it doesn't go to the court. But if it does, your guess is as good as mine.
Coming back to that little prayer you said at the start, Josh, that people say, if there is a result, let it be an overwhelming one. Let it not be close. I mean, clearly, we're looking for some kind of definite outcome in this election. At some point, someone may declare, may not declare. I mean, clearly, there's a lot of things that happen between now and when we get a result. But I'm wondering sort of where we go from here. I mean, if there's a challenge, that clearly raises lots and lots of questions about the whole process, doesn't it? About the whole issue. Does it raise any constitutional issues for you?
Oh, absolutely. Once you start having challenges to a ballot, you have to ask whether the recounts are fair. For example, in Florida, the Florida Supreme Court in 2000 ordered recounts in certain Democratic counties, but not in Republican counties. It was an unfair balance. In some of these cases, the state courts are making up rules rather than the state legislature, and there's a question for which branch of government should be deciding these things, the elected branches or the judiciary. There's so many open, lingering issues, and there's a timeline that comes into play. The Supreme Court can only decide until mid-December. That's when the president basically has to be selected. There are certain deadlines set by statutes of when our electoral college meets and votes. So whatever happens has to happen in the next 5 or 6 weeks. So it's going to be a marathon one way or the other.
Josh Blackman, thank you for sharing your analysis with us. Josh Blackman, Professor of Law from the South Texas College of Law based in Houston.